Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we have an exciting rumor that you may have missed throughout all this craziness that's happening over the last few days from Nintendo, with all the Metroid Prime 4 news, the news on Hyrule Warriors, the news on Pokemon Legends ZA, everything else is happening in between with all these other big announcements. There is a rumor that came up that might be just as big of a deal, if not more so. Luigi's Mansion 4 is in development, and this could have some pretty big implications. We could be talking about a game that may be one of the most technically impressive games on the Switch 2 for its entire lifespan, and it could be coming out very soon. And that's what we're getting into today. Are you looking to increase your game for the launch of Call of Duty Black Ops 7? Then perhaps you're in luck, because we have the KontrolFreek Call of Duty Black Ops 7 performance sticks, as well as the Galaxy Gamer Pack Carbon Black Edition sticks. These sticks for an Xbox controller offer better precision, aim, and movement. With the mid-rise left stick, it improves your movement and control, and with the high-rise right, it increases your precision and improves your aiming. And for longer play sessions, these grips offer a great deal of comfort. You can check them out with the link in the description below. So I've been theorizing throughout the entire year that Luigi's Mansion 4 is coming very soon. For a few months, I was actually thinking Luigi's Mansion 4 could be even coming out this year of 2025 as Nintendo's big Halloween release. Now at this point, it's obvious that is not happening. However, there was a lot of reason to think that Luigi's Mansion 4 was very close. You look at the history of games made by Next Level Games, the developer for the Luigi's Mansion series, and they come out with a game every 3 years. They've been doing this for a while. They had multiple games on 3DS, such as Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon, then Metroid Prime Federation Force, and they still maintained this pattern of release, even switching over to the Switch, a far more powerful console, with Luigi's Mansion 3 and then Mario Strikers. And so now here we are in 2025, and for the first time they are not maintaining their 3-year release schedule pattern. But we have seen that all throughout the year, Next Level Games has been hiring for a new project, which leads me to believe that they're getting ready for a new project and wrapping up a current project. What is that current project? I've been assuming Luigi's Mansion 4. You have all of this stuff going on for Mario's 40th anniversary. Luigi does play a role there. There would certainly be some strong cross-promotion that could be had if they were to announce a Luigi's Mansion 4 relatively soon. Doesn't have to be this year. It can be next year, especially with the Mario movie coming out. This boost in sales we see happens before and afterwards. And Luigi's Mansion 3 is one of the most successful games that came out for Switch 1. It sold over 14 million copies, so the follow-up could be just as successful, perhaps even more so. Because with Nintendo Switch 2, the conversation around its abilities from a graphical perspective, from a technical perspective, are impressive considering what it is. The Switch 2 is capable of 4K gaming. The Switch 2 is running all new Nintendo games at 60 frames per second. That appears to be the new standard. And we're continually seeing more and more very impressive third-party efforts. Resident Evil 9 Requiem running at 60 frames per second, a AAA game that some people doubted would even come to the console. We continue to see improvements with games like Star Wars Outlaws that just look amazing. Or what we saw with Cyberpunk, for example, an incredible launch title. And we're also hearing that we're going to see continued updates to Nvidia's DLSS technology that's going to continue to improve and help make games look and run better on the Switch 2. I actually think if you just look at what Nintendo themselves has had to offer, they've really just been scratching the surface here. Listen, I think Mario Kart World is beautiful. I think Donkey Kong Bonanza is beautiful. But we have learned from the Ask Developer series for both games that they started off as Switch 1 titles. And then you look at everything else that's significant coming out this year from Nintendo. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond started off as a Switch 1 title, has a very nice Switch 2 upgrade, but is still a Switch 1 title. A very impressive Switch 1 title, but that's what it is. Pokemon Legends ZA, not really an impressive game, but it does seem to have had some significant improvements over prior Pokemon games, and the Switch 2 version does look and run well, but it is still a Switch 1 title. And then we have Kirby Air Riders. I actually think it looks great, but many people have been remarking on how it doesn't seem to be that visually impressive. And so really what I feel like we're looking at here is more so kind of like Switch 1 games with a few improvements in terms of resolution and performance. And maybe that is actually a bit of an understatement because like I said, I do think a lot of these games look and run great, But really, I don't think we've seen that much in terms of what the Switch 2 is capable of from a Nintendo side of things. I actually feel like what we've seen from some third-party companies like Resident Evil 9, like Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, these games are more impressive than what we've seen from Nintendo for the most part. And so I'm left wondering about the Nintendo games that are going to start to really take advantage of the hardware. Even Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, at least at first glance, I'm not so sure is fully taking advantage of the hardware. Maybe it is, maybe I'm underselling that game too much, but I look at the Luigi's Mansion series. Luigi's Mansion 1 was a real showcase for the Nintendo GameCube. Dark Moon wasn't bad for the 3DS, and Luigi's Mansion 3 is still considered one of the most impressive games for the Switch 1. So a Luigi's Mansion 4 next year for 2026, not that much later than what we would expect from next level games, could fit really well, coming out early on for the console, enjoying a launch of those evergreen sales from the beginning of the era, taking advantage of that cross motion with the Mario movie coming out, and just being a significant graphical and technical showcase for the Switch 2, there is some serious potential there. I haven't even mentioned the potential benefits of mouse controls, for example. Mouse controls could really benefit a game like Luigi's Mansion, being able to aim and move around your flashlight or your poltergust in a far more fast, responsive fashion. Like, there's definitely some serious, obvious benefits that could be there. And then we also consider that it was just announced that Luigi's Mansion 1 is coming to Nintendo Classics, and is coming out essentially for Halloween later this week. But during this trailer, Nintendo also makes sure to point out that the entire trilogy is available on Switch 2. To me, that screams, pun intended there considering the whole Halloween spooky element to things here, that they are hinting at Luigi's Mansion 4, that they are setting things up for Luigi's Mansion 4 so everyone can experience and enjoy the entire series before we can enjoy Luigi's Mansion 4, which I think at this point is still very likely and coming out next year. But at this point, it's all a theory. Fortunately though, we now have a rumor coming from what I would say is a credible place saying that this game is indeed in development. So who's saying this? Nash Weedle. You may have missed it because Nash Weedle didn't post it on his Twitter account, but rather put it on his 4th episode of Partida Zero, which is entirely in Spanish. Maybe another reason why not that many people have heard about this, because you have to actually watch and understand it in Spanish. But during Nash Weedle's Leak Express segment, he does talk about Luigi's Mansion 4, and the basic rumor is just that Luigi's Mansion 4 is in development. Now, some people still like to doubt Nash Weedle, but just recently, Assassin's Creed Shadows this past week was confirmed for Switch 2. Nash Weedle, as he talked about a few days ago, actually leaked this project coming out early on for Switch 2 back in 2024, before everyone else. Very similar to a lot of other Nash Weedle leaks we've talked about all throughout the year, such as Indiana Jones, Metroid Prime 4 having mouse controls, Donkey Kong Bonanza over 3D Mario in the April Direct, and so much more. So considering everything I already mentioned, it already makes sense to think that Luigi's Mansion 4 is likely in the works. And then when we also consider the track history of Nash Weedle here, I have very little reason to doubt that this is true. The only real question in my mind is this game coming out next year? We know Next Level Games is hiring for a new project, but what I have to wonder is, are they hiring for a new project because they are wrapping up Luigi's Mansion 4, or are they hiring for a new project because they are starting Luigi's Mansion 4? From a business perspective, I would say that getting at Luigi's Mansion 4 first would make much more sense. Following up the success of Luigi's Mansion 3, Nintendo knew how successful that game was, so them wanting to push for a Luigi's Mansion 4 to come out around the time of Mario's 40th anniversary and also the release of the Mario movie makes a lot of sense from a business perspective, especially if it's also early on into the Switch 2 era. The game and the console could both benefit each other there. Them waiting a few years, I'm sure the game would still be successful, but I do think that they would be losing out on some of that impact there. So I'm inclined to think that, yes, Luigi's Mansion 4 is the game that they are wrapping up. But before going forward, let me point out that I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you find yourself enjoying my videos, including this one, I would very much appreciate your support, be that a subscription, liking, sharing, commenting, hyping the video. That all makes a big difference. Regardless, at least thank you for checking out this one. But I do want to briefly talk about what this other project might be from Next Level Games, because either A, we're waiting longer for Luigi's Mansion 4 and it's in the works, which is fine. When it does come out, it'll be amazing. But if that's the case, or even if it's not the case, like, what is this other project, right? Like, either Luigi's Mansion 4 is about to come out, or they're starting it and then they have this other game. What would be this other game? It's hard for me to think that this other game would be nearly as successful as a Luigi's Mansion 4. Which is why I kind of assume that Luigi's Mansion 4 is coming out first, and then they're moving on to the other project. But I do remember a rumor from a while back, and this is coming from friend of the channel, Nintendo Prime. He had said, he had heard, that Next Level Games might be helping out with an F-Zero GX remaster. Now, I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is true. Maybe the project was canceled. We had heard about some sort of F-Zero project being in the works for some time, even from Nate the Hate, if I'm not mistaken. But that hasn't materialized. Could it be that Next Level Games has been working on a pretty ambitious F-Zero project? And maybe that's what they finished, and maybe that's what's coming out relatively soon? An F-Zero game for Switch 2 could be pretty impressive. Now, if it's just a remaster, I'm not so sure, but it could be a fairly ambitious one, which is certainly possible. But given that we just got Mario Kart World and we're about to get Kirby Air Riders, I would be kind of surprised if there's another Nintendo racer that's right around the corner. Now, don't get me wrong. Personally, I don't think that's that big of a deal. I don't think Kirby Air Riders or Mario Kart World are really even that similar. I think there's room to have several different racing games come out in a short time frame because they all should feel pretty different. I actually really dislike the perspective that Kirby Air Riders is basically just another Mario Kart World. They are such different games, and so would be an F-Zero, so would be a Wave Race, so would be an Excitebots or an Excite Truck game. Nintendo has a lot of different racing IP that they can use that would all feel very fresh and different from each other. I could play them all back to back and I wouldn't feel any sort of fatigue because they would all be very different games. Just because all of them are about racing doesn't mean that they wouldn't be very different racing experiences. Like, you could play a Persona game, and then a Xenoblade game, and then a Final Fantasy game, and then a Pokemon game, and yes, they're all RPGs, but they're all very different from each other. Or you could play Tears of the Kingdom, then play Elden Ring, then play Black Myth Wukong, and yes, they're all third-person action-adventure games, but they're all very different from each other, so I wouldn't mind if an F-Zero is about to come out sometime next year. That would be totally fine. Now, do I think that's actually happening? I don't think so. I think most likely we're about to get Luigi's Mansion 4 next year. I thought it was going to happen this year, but clearly that's not the case. I think that just means it's coming out sometime next year. I think Next Level Games has just spent a little bit more time on this project, or perhaps because of all the other projects Nintendo has to come out this year, Nintendo wanted to save a project like Luigi's Mansion 4 for next year, even if it could have in theory been ready for this year. We don't know exactly what's happening behind the scenes, but I do think we are very close to a very epic game. And also, by the way, whoever is working on an F-Zero, if Nintendo has anyone working on an F-Zero, I hope it comes soon, because that is my favorite racing series. Fingers crossed. But what do you all think? What do you make of this recent rumor of Luigi's Mansion 4 being in development? Do you think that means they are just starting? Do you think that means that Next Level Games is actually wrapping up this project and it's likely coming out next year? Or is there something else going on? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.